Werewolves have been a staple of supernatural fiction for a very long time, longer than you may imagine. The first known story of man shifting into wolf comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh, the semi-mythical king of Ur, in a region that was called Mesopotamia. The story goes that Gilgamesh turns down this woman who fancies him and is hitting on him. It mentions that the woman has previously turned her last lovers into wolves. Though small, this was the first recorded transmutation of man into wolf. Another tale of a man shifting into a wolf is an ancient Greek mythology of the king of Arcadia. This king was called Lycion. He got turned into a wolf after serving Zeus a meal of the remains of a sacrificed boy. This angered Zeus, so as punishment, he turned Lycion and all his sons into wolves, and many Greek philosophers have speculated on this story. A far more modern retelling of the werewolf trope is a 2000 Canadian film called Ginger Snaps, which centres around two sisters, Ginger and Bridget, who are death-obsessed and outcasts to the locals of Bailey Downs. The beginning sets the scene of the town being terrorised by a creature known as the Beast of Bailey Downs. The use of creatures haunting country towns is nothing new, seen in many supernatural films, but also in recorded sightings. For example, the Beast of Bray Road. In the book of the same name, author Linda Godfrey has compiled a series of eyewitness accounts describing a supposed werewolf that prowls around Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Nicknamed as such, for in 1993, resident Lorraine Andrezzi was driving around Bray Road and spotted this man crouched down by the side of the road. But it wasn't a man, it was actually some creature covered in fur with a wolf-like snout, pointed ears, and yellow eyes. When Ginger gets bitten by a werewolf after it chases her into the woods, she starts a gradual process of transforming into one. Being bitten is a common way of becoming a werewolf, along with being cursed or voluntarily becoming one. In ancient Greeks, it was said that magical sorcerers could shapeshift into werewolves by rubbing ointment or wearing a magical loincloth or even inhaling certain potions. These would almost instantaneously turn them into a werewolf. However, for Ginger, the process is slow, for she starts to grow more hair on her body, her teeth start to elongate into fangs, and a snout starts to appear. Her eyes even change from a green to a yellow. Along with this, her behaviour becomes more bold and reckless. It is a metaphor for Ginger's inner beast, as we see her become more like a werewolf, really embodying the anarchistic character that we see her as at the beginning of the film. Another metaphor that can be further insinuated is one that suggests the werewolf virus is a sort of STD. After Ginger gets bitten, she has unprotected sex with a kid named Jason. The werewolfism infects him, and he starts to become a werewolf too. Using werewolves as a metaphor for the way humans act has been seen in the past. During 16th century France, the story of serial killers actually being werewolves spread. When caught, murderers would confess that they have become wolves who would attack and maul people instead of the man, as a way to excuse the heinous violence as something only an animalistic beast could do. Werewolf trials came about as an effect of the witch trials that happened throughout Europe in the 15th century. The first cases started in the early 1400s in the Valais region of Switzerland. There were accusations that these witches adopting the form of wolves and mutilating cattle, resulting in apparently several hundred convictions for both men and women. This spread to the rest of Europe during a time when Christianity was struggling against regional pagan traditions. Depending on the severity of the crime, terrible, gruesome punishments were handed out. One such, which isn't for the faint of heart, was for Pete Stubb, or Stump, in Germany, 1589, where he was strapped to a cartwheel by an executioner. Then his skin was removed with hot pincers. His head was chopped off and his body burnt at the stake. His head was also carved into the face of a wolf and displayed to all as a warning to others about making transactions with the devil. Despite how horrendous this punishment was, Farmer Pete Stump, or Stubb, was a known serial killer and known as the Wolf of Bedburg for mutilating and killing cattle, kidnapping children and snatching up women to slaughter them. He was also a cannibalist who was recorded to have eaten the fetus from pregnant women. Ginger Snap is a rather recent werewolf film that, despite its cult following from horror enthusiasts, didn't get the same limelight as others. This was due to the boom in teen supernatural fiction around the time. They all depict werewolves in a different way. For Twilight, there are two types of werewolf. The first being true wolves, or children of the moon. But there are also man-to-wolf shapeshifters, spirit warriors from the Quill-Yurt tribe. These are the ones seen in the movies. Similar or taken inspiration from skinwalkers, a depiction of werewolves from the Navajo tribespeople, where shaman will shapeshift into wolves to travel great distances by covering themselves in wolf skin. The connection between animals and humans is a belief that has been around since the beginning of humanity, since the start of people connecting themselves with the world around them. It is a common Native American myth describing that in the beginning of things, humans were as animals were as humans. This myth was the fundamentality of various legends across different North American tribes. For Harry Potter, the creature of the werewolf is far different. These are people who have been infected by a magical illness known as lycanthropy, via contact between saliva and blood. Visually, Harry Potter's werewolves and normal wolves look very different. Unlike in Twilight, it isn't as simple as shapeshifting, but rather a wolf-human hybrid. When they change forms, they become mindless hunters. It has to be said that the werewolves in Harry Potter are a metaphor for AIDS/HIV. Reflected through the stigma around people with lycanthropy in the books, reflecting the stigma of AIDS around the time the books were written. With the two main werewolf characters, Remus Lupin and Fenrir Greyback, depicting two extreme behaviours of werewolves. Greyback is a sadistic character who finds enjoyment in maiming and terrorising, which in response causes the wizarding world to be terrified by werewolves, which is why Remus Lupin is forced to hide away his condition. Earlier depictions of werewolves in movies set the trend for people's expectations and understandings of the creatures. From An American Werewolf in London, 1981, this film paved the way for werewolves by depicting the suffering that can be bestowed upon someone who has been bitten. The werewolf character is always a mournful role. This can be seen in the sequel, An American Werewolf in Paris, 1997, as the main character saves the life of a young woman who intends to commit suicide by jumping off the Eiffel Tower due to not coping with being a werewolf herself. However, in the hit comedy Teen Wolf, 1985, the main protagonist overcomes his new werewolfism by using it to his advantage in winning a basketball game. He's not shunned nor possessed to terrorize a city, but instead uses his newfound abilities to good. It puts a positive light on a trope, even if it's a rare sight to see. Ginger Snaps overall is the perfect blend of gory horror and teen drama, which makes it such a memorable werewolf flick for anyone part of the cult following. Its uniqueness makes it stand out against copy and paste narratives of other supernatural media. However, it has clearly taken inspiration from classic werewolf tropes, as I've mentioned, or puts a spin on things to modernize the common role of the werewolf.